And we're back. Next two slide decks have to do with the basics of Perl. We'll have Perl Basics and more Perl Basics. Okay, what is Perl? Perl is a scripting language invented by Larry Wall in 1987. It was popular during the 90s because it's all about strings, as we will learn. It's got its own culture, and when it says about getting things done and having fun at the same time. You have a lot of these languages crop up, and each of them have their own little culture. I will caution you, don't fall in love with your tools. Now, you say it gained popularity in the 90s. Is it still a viable language? I just looked out on job application. There are still job openings for COBOL. And much to my surprise, there are still job openings for my own dearly loved DBase. Okay, Larry Wall, he wanted to help develop written languages for people who only had spoken languages. There's some discussion about whether he's actually a linguist or not. I don't know. He thought of Perl as a natural language, and any of you that dealt with one of the C variants, C, C++, or C#, you'll appreciate that. Talks about idiosyncrasies. This guy's quite a character. The Camel book was his original definitive book on Perl. He says he's the benevolent dictator for life of the Perl project. That's nice. Larry's getting towards the end of his career now, and the interesting question will be who will take over from him. Okay. The Perl interpreter reads a Perl scripts and sits there and parses it in and goes into bytecodes. This is something like Java. And this bytecode file is interpreted by the interpreter at runtime, the execution stage. Now what this means is you can actually have, since it compiles, you can actually have it check for compile errors or potential compile errors, and that's kind of nice. Okay, a scalar variable is an individual unit of data. It could be 1, 5, 3.14, but that would be irrational. It could be a string. You can have single quoted or double quoted strings. You can have reference pointers, just like you might have learned if you've dealt with C. All right, many operations in Perl expect a single value, so they expect a scalar as opposed to a list. Languages like PowerShell are big on lists. Okay, array. Okay, arrays like you've learned with everything else, and it's zero-based. The first element in a Perl array is element 0, not element 1. Use the @ for array, that makes sense. Okay, Perl is a scripting language, so when you access an element, like if you have a 10 element array and you try to access element 12, which would be index 11, it won't sit there and throw up its hands and stomp its feet and stomp out of the door and throw an error and say I quit. It would just simply give you an undefined object. Just say I don't know what you're talking about. And if you have something that catches that, that's fine. If you don't, then suddenly your program crashes because it's looking for value and it's not finding it. Okay, and you can assign a value to an array element whose index is outside the bounds of array. For example, if you had a 10 element array, the actual index of the last element would be 9. Well, if you forgot that and you tried to add element number 11, Perl would add element number 10, which you would set to undef, and it would add element 11 as you said. Well, index 10 and index 11. Okay, hash variables. You can't eat this. It's basically you've got a key and value. For example, here we have mascots. This is a hash, and the key is bucks. The value is cougars. Okay, and it tells you how to access the value of the key, and you can also treat the you can have arrays like this. You know, it's like if you want to talk all the college mascots, you can access those. Okay, regular expressions. Perl process strings, and regular expressions are used to process strings. So regular expressions are powerful, but you have to look them up and you have to know what the syntax means. Okay, terminal input output. Okay, your in is your keyboard, your output's your terminal window, your error stream is your terminal window. Unless you say something different, it's going to output to the terminal and it's going to give you the errors to the terminal. Okay, you have line input, you have scalar context, only one line at a time will be read from the keyboard. Okay, a couple of useful short commands. We used one of them. We used Perl V to get the version of Perl we had and found out it was 5 because Perl 6 is a whole nother animal. Okay, writing and running Perl. There's no specific IDE for Perl. Kind of reminds me of VB script. VB script, I had people come swaggering in and said, I need the same IDE that you have. I said, you have it. It's notepad.exe. For Perl, for our exercises, I use gedit and Ubuntu. It just worked just fine. Okay, if you really get to where you're using Perl to make a living, you might want to have a little fancier text editor. There's a couple of them there. You need to put a .pl file extension on it so that your text editor will recognize it's a Perl file, and if it's got syntax highlighting, it will highlight it properly. Okay, so now you can run a Perl command by saying Perl and then the name of the Perl file. Or if you put the shebang for that, you put it at the top of your executable script file. Don't forget to go chmod 755, otherwise it'll tell you don't have the permissions to run it. Okay, reading assignment. Get you a couple cups of coffee, sit down, go through this to get you kind of your background in it. As I said before, this course is not made to make you an expert in any language. It's give you an exposure to a variety of languages. Here's some additional Perl resources courtesy of Dr. Sessions, and we're at an end.